Well, I think we'll go ahead and get started. I think I know everybody here except the couple sitting there at the second table. My name is Mark Webster. I'm the president of the Friends of the Jefferson Law Library. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming to this luncheon. We never need a menu because all you have to do is look at my shirt to tell you what we're serving. Today's program is a little bit unusual because it's lawyers and the law. I want to thank you for coming. I want to let you know that next year we've got at least 10 more presentations just like this. The next one coming up on February 19th. Paul Greiner, who has spoken here before. But I thought I'd say something about law and poetry because it's not that, they're not that different. I don't know if you know or not, Sir Walter Scott was a lawyer. Goethe, who wrote the Faust, was a lawyer. And then we've had plenty of American lawyers who were poets. James Weldon Johnson, William Cullen Bryant. Probably the most famous poet is Wallace Stevens, who was an attorney for the Hartford in Hartford, Connecticut. One of my favorites, Edgar Lee Masters, who wrote Spoon River Anthology. I don't know if you ever read that or not. He was a poet in the Chicago area, known mostly for being sharing space with Clarence Darrow, the attorney for the damned. And I think ultimately poetry is a lot like law because sometimes you got to read it 2 or 3 times and you still don't know what they've said. But anyhow, the 2 speakers today are John Hardy, and he's going to talk about his book, When the Rain Finally Comes, and then David Leightty, who's going to talk about Knowing That Most Things Break. After they read, they're going to speak a little bit, and if you want, you can purchase books and they'll sign books after. So thank you all for coming and thank you all for agreeing to speak. Do you need the podium? I'll pull it up here for you.
I guess so. This is okay. So, I'm John Hardy. That's David Leightty over there. We're going to play tag team and each read a few poems and talk, and then the other one will come up for a little bit and back and forth a little bit. I'm a Louisville native, have a wife and 2 kids, I've practiced law for 40 years. I've written poetry for around 20 years. And I got started when I started jotting some things down, old clever sayings and different things and topics. And after a while, I expanded on them and noticed some of them sounded a little bit like poetry. One day I was in the grocery store and I ran into a friend of mine who was a local poet, Ray Cobbs, who David knew too. And I asked her, well, I think I'm writing some poetry, but I don't know what I'm doing. What should I do? So she made some suggestions and suggested a group to go to. And it's kind of like AA. But you know, writing poetry can be kind of a compulsion. So you're in a room with a group of people that have the same issue. But anyway, so I'm going to start and read a few poems, and I'm going to try to give you kind of a cross section so you can see different types of topics, different styles of poems. The first one is a poem I think is fairly timely called Time Change. And I trot this out around this time each year. Early November, like robots, we fall back to Eastern Standard Time, bringing sunshine again to our mornings, dusk sooner to our days. But no one thinks to explain this to the dog, who, quite certain of what time it really is, rises when it's time to go out, waits by the pantry when her treat is due, looks out the window when we're supposed to come home, stares at her bowl when it's dinner time, but most other times resumes guard duty, which it seems is all other times, since no one else appreciates the dire threat posed by the mailman. Now, you might have noticed there wasn't any rhyming there. Poems don't have to rhyme. So I suppose there's some debate about that, but I sometimes accidentally rhyme. I think about 10 to 15% of the ones I write have rhymes in them, and they kind of take on their own energy when they do, and when they don't, then I have to decide, well, do I really need to spend the energy to try to make everything rhyme, or are there more important things going on in here? Is it fine as it is? I tend to write a lot of poems about the dog, because sometimes when I'm sitting there wondering what to write about, the dog's sitting there too, sometimes doing something odd, and it's a convenient subject. This one's called Raised Eyebrow. The dog has a big job, responsible for a family, house, the entire yard as far as she can see. She marks her territory, barks at approaching strangers, other dogs, chases critters out of sight, rabbits into their holes, squirrels up a tree. Back inside, she runs to the door, gives the mailman what for, or mailwoman, waits anxiously for our return, jumps up and down. But when the day's over and the dog settles down, gets really comfortable, a raised eyebrow is about all you're gonna get. Keeping in the family pet theme, our son sometimes brings his 2 cats to visit. And our current dog is a little Yorkshire Terrier mix. And she must have been in a household where there were cats, because she often acts like a cat. And she sees these visitors and she's very excited. She wants to play with them. This one's called Morning Ruckus. Morning silence broken with sounds of dog ruckus and cat ruckus. Our son's visiting cats, not too trusting of our Schnorky, Yorkie Schnauzer mix, who only wants to play, but has those remarkable rows of teeth, runs just a little too fast, stands just a little too close. Cats hiss or scatter rather than wait to be eaten. That her lop ears slowly become more accepting, but let her know she is not one of them, not truly a cat. No matter how often she perches on the back of a sofa, rests in people's laps, she will always be just the dog of the house, nothing more. And they will be cats doing whatever cats do, climbing upon the printer to gaze out the window, pouncing from atop furniture, pawing the occasional moth or bug, hanging back from an open door, never too sure why the dog would ever go out there. I'm afraid I'm without my watch today. I left it somewhere, but I'll try this technique. Oh, I have a few minutes here still for the next round. This is one of my more recent poems, inspired by an event that occurred on a short vacation. It's called Disgusting Bug Urn. She said something after exiting the shower, something that sounded like, "There's a disgusting bug urn." Odd, but the shower door had closed. The water was running, and she probably had her back to me. Naturally, I looked when I stepped out, but I didn't see anything like that, nothing at all. We were on vacation, staying in an old house via Verbo. You never really know what you might find. Later, she explained she was telling me there was a step down coming out of the shower. I appreciated the warning. One thing I learned early on when I was writing poetry that was being discussed in groups is that lawyers tend to be a bit abstract. Poets, on the other hand, they write differently. They leave out punctuation. They break lines in odd places, and they tend to illustrate a lot more with examples and color descriptions and that sort of thing. So I had to work on that quite a bit. I'll do one more here before David comes up. This one is a law-related poem. Anyone who's, especially if they've started practicing in the last few years, might appreciate this. It's called My First Motion Hour. This is some time ago. So excited, my first time. Uncle Ben asked me to cover motion hour, attend with 60 real lawyers. 3 routine requests in a family law case. Spent 3 hours preparing, checking everything, listing every argument. Not that argument would be needed. One simply asked to enforce a previous order, the exact penalty he prescribed. A chronically delinquent father paying no child support. I waited in the courtroom. My case was called. I announced my appearance, strode quickly to the bench, but all was for naught. The judge never looked up, never let me speak, was busy writing something as he announced all 3 motions were denied. Suddenly, I was 0 for 3 without ever getting to bed. I'll let David have a turn now. David Leightty.
I'm gonna move this a little closer. I'm David Leightty, as has been announced about 3 times. I've been a lawyer for, I just did the math, 47 years. I am close to retirement, but can't seem to quite get there. Most of the poems I'm going to read are included in my book. There are a few new ones. I have to tell you, I don't write free verse. I am in that minority group of poets who still believe in a measure. All my poems have some sort of measure. Some people call it meter, but I don't like the Latin meter. I like measure better. Some of them rhyme, some don't, but all of them have a measure. I promise I will get to at least one poem that relates to law. But I'm going to start first with a poem about Louisville, and it's a poem that is, I will tell you, some of my poems are extremely short, some are fairly long. This one's a little on the long side. It's about fire, which is a natural phenomenon that can be dangerous or helpful, and it makes a big difference when it's not helpful. The first stanza in this poem describes the fire that destroyed the First Unitarian Church in December of 1985, and I happened to have a chance to witness it. 2 things you need to know. The word Holocaust does mean destruction by fire, and the other thing is a fire nozzle. Fire nozzles are held by the firefighters, and they have to hang on extremely because the blast is coming out strongly, and if you let it go, it starts flopping around, and it's very dangerous. The things are heavy. Anyway, the name of the poem is A Vigilance. A twisting totem formed of black smoke rose. The steeples form a flaming silhouette. The sanctuary's once familiar space of fury, unimaginable now. Flanking the scene, arrays of engines, trucks, firefighters running hose for city blocks. They doused it with a dozen focused jets, some on the ground, others precarious from ladder trucks. Ice formed on faces, gloves, the footing bad. They fought close till it flashed, then pulled back, fighting steady in platoons, The aim now, just contain it. Scrambled back to dig out one man from collapsing ash, subdued a thrashing nozzle's lunatic throes, and let the blaze devour its sustenance. When it was done, a scorched stone's shell remained. Fire, primal element, pre-human force, intrinsic in the floorboards, joists, and beams cut from the forest, built into the homes and structures of our lives, fused in the fuels extracted from the depths of earth and time, in fluids piped in, taped on, or painted on. Ignition wired into the walls. It lurks, deliberate in the arsonist's warped aim, deliberate and random in lightning strike. It warmed the fire nurtured in stoves and hearths, but loosed it wreaks historic havoc. Nero's Rome, Chicago, San Francisco, Tokyo, a wild consuming bent here from all time. A fire platoon, their horseplay brought up short in klaxon heartbeat, fronts a burning home. Paced by long tedious hours of drill, they pierced the raging threshold. Then, faint heard a cry. Two, find the child crouched, trembling in a nook he crawled to, frightened in the acrid dark. No natural drift, but human instrument, dispatched when civil warmth ignites to ruin a city's guard against its own flagration of vigilance to be kept on pain of Holocaust. The next poem is really short, but it's sort of a footnote to the prior poem. It lets us know how some fire starts and gives a good reason to stop smoking. It's called Proximate Cause. Home burnt, lives lost. Was it an angry flash past all control, or the considered price of gain or hate? No, a slow, careless ash, smoldering in addictive human vice. Two more about Louisville. This one is entitled Crosshairs. It is about an actual incident in 1994 that occurred in Jeffersonville, Indiana, just across the river. Pretty self-explanatory. He stopped his useless pickup center strip and clambered out. A small child on his hip, the 12 gauge in his free hand, waved to stop a random car. 40 yards off, a cop followed through crosshairs, fixed in steadied fear, poised for the moment one shot would stand clear. The boy had fired twice, vaguely toward his ex, shrieking he'd never leave his daughter, next past crouching officers. His blast sprayed wild, touched not a soul, but terrified the child. When he veered past their blocking cars, they shot his tires and chased him, wobbling to this spot. The marksman watched now, holding steady aim. The boy stopped one car, thrust a shotgun claim. The woman driver braced, then answered, "No." The boy paused. "And you let that baby go." The 12 gauge wavered, muzzle toward the clear. The rifle shot transfigured every year that the cop had never had to use that gun. The boy fell, dropped the child, sprawled out, arms outflung. The woman scrambled out, stepped where they lay, took the dazed child, and kicked the gun away. This time, the child came home, the boy survived, an end better than many we've contrived. Men, women, children, guns, so on it goes. Ancient roles cast in timeless juxtapose, wrenching the daily calm with disbelief, the steady hands trembling now in trauma's grief. A law poem, or a poem that relates to law. This poem is titled Loving v. Virginia. That is the title of a case decided by the United States Supreme Court in 1967, ruling that a statute banning marriage between a black person and a white person was unconstitutional. The couple involved they were the appellants, and the name Loving was so serendipitous, I just took the title of the case and made it the title of the poem, and also used loving to identify the couple in the poem. I will call your attention to the fact that this is a sonnet, a form of poetry often used in love poems. The scene, Virginia's High Court has proclaimed the loving couple must serve prison time for marrying while black and white, and named that this sacrament a grave immoral crime. Our highest court, though, viewed it differently. In reasoned phrases, named the marriage ban a blatant incident to slavery, and ruled the racial metric could not stand. And so, this time, great statesmen held steadfast, and so, this time, love triumphed over hate. But one clear shining moment can't foretell a next. The feasts of hate may just outlast great statesmanship till poison dominates. As past and present times show all too well. Another poem related to law. This one is entitled Constitutional, and it's about the United States Constitution, which in this poem I envisioned as a great oak tree rising out of a field of brambles and leaves and junk.
Can't wait to hear this.
Okay. You need to know, if you don't, and it's a stretch, it references the Sibyl. The Sibyl was a personage of ancient Greek myth. She lived in a cave. She was a prophetess, and people came to her to have their prophecies. They want to know what's going to happen to them. So she would listen to them and then send them away. She would eventually write down her prophecy on leaves, and that people would eventually return. But when they opened the door to the cave, the wind would blow, and all the leaves were scattered. So, constitutional. Meanings arise here like the green of trees, stained, then scattered with the Sibyl's leaves. Still bearing this rank season's tangling yield, the trunk stands rooted in a tangled field. About done here.
Well, you can.
Okay,
now
one
read
more.
another.
One more. Okay, I'm going to turn to some. When I get back up again, I'll do some more of these. But turning to nature poems, lots more fun. This poem is entitled "The Manatees of the Wakalah River." My wife Sharon and I have had many wonderful adventures in our canoe. We throw it on the top of the car, and we can go anywhere with it. And there are many streams and rivers in the United States. They're just wonderful places. The Wakalah River is in Florida. It is only 10 miles long. It has its source is a huge spring that just produces thousands and thousands of gallons, and it flows the 10 miles. Its 10-mile course down to the Gulf. It's got all kinds of creatures in it. Among them are the wonderful manatees. The poem is dedicated to my wife, and the voice speaking the poem is me addressing her. So it is for Sharon. We started at the great freshwater spring, paddling the river's cool, clear 10-mile rung to the salt-flavored inlets of the Gulf. We happened on them, milling docilely in a wide pool near halfway through the run. Untroubled by our small, silent craft, at least 24, maybe more. We paused to watch them circling, females with small calves, others in companionable pods. Time passed. Cautious, we eased into their midst, our canoe moving quietly as they, as we basked in their placid disregard. Then one approached, seeming curious. We held our breaths as it came close and stayed. The creature's form abutting on the boat, in gentle contact close to where you sat. And more time passed as we sat still. At last I said, I think it's wanting you to touch it. You slowly moved your hand onto its head. The manatee submerged, circling away. That's all of that, we thought. But no, its circling brought it back where you sat, again, gently abutting the canoe. Again, you touched it slowly with your hand, and again it remained, accepting human touch, staying there as we held our breaths once more, its head just barely breaching through the surface. The three of us remained there, still and silent, each of us sensing this unlikely moment of communion between two unlike species who thrived in vastly disparate environments. And more time passed. I cannot say how much. Inevitably, the moment reached an end. The manatee rejoined its own companions, and we resumed our journey, awash in wonder.
You're supposed to say. Okay. Well, you know, rhyming is sometimes difficult, and one of the gripes that publishers have about rhyming poems is that they get a lot of submissions, and some of the rhymes are what they call forced. It's a poem in search of words that will rhyme, and it becomes the major mission of the poem sometimes. Sometimes the poems aren't all that good, but each line might end in a rhyming word. But there's a lot more to poetry. There's rhythm and language choices, different things that are important elements. There are very good poems that rhyme, and there's some that aren't so good that rhyme. And I've got a few. I went down to the Ryman Auditorium, and I found that didn't help out. But I do have a few poems that rhyme. This first one has a certain rhythm to it, and it pretty much wrote itself. You might recognize the style of it, although I didn't set out to do it this way. It just, like I said, it kind of wrote itself. And it has a canoe in it, so it's a good connection to what David was talking about. It's called Docktail. Alongside a dock, well, there might be a rock, or maybe a log right next to a frog, or maybe a stump where a canoe might bump, or canoeist might trip, take suddenly a dip, which upsets the frog, that frog by a log, might cause him to jump, the canoe just to bump, right into the rock alongside the dock, which till now was quite tranquil before things started to jangle. Now, you could probably tell that last word was kind of a reach, but at least it rhymed. This next one rhymes, but it's got quite a different tone to it. It's called Disappearance. I'm not sure where this came from, but there have been various suggestions about me being involved in some dangerous or criminal activity or something. I guess they just assumed I was writing about me, but this one's called Disappearance. Gently he caressed them, laid each out on the floor, gazed upon old photos, buttoned up what he wore, called out to no answer, to which he then swore, one last look at the table, where were many before. He shuttered the windows, then locked up the door, latched the gate behind him, and was heard from no more. And then another rhyming poem that's a different direction. One of my interests is gardening, and I also like to eat what comes out of the garden, mostly. Not so much the bugs, but the produce. Now, this one's called Tomato Hash. Olive oil or butter, if close at hand, minced garlic, onion go into the pan. Sweet peppers, fresh basil, perhaps some eggplant, mushrooms or toadstools, but okra I can't. All set the stage as they curl and they soften, for the ones that I use at times the most often. Heirlooms and Romas, better boys and girls, all join in this moment, give the essence of their pearls. They stir and they bubble, they blend and they cry, fill air with aromas, tomato hash, oh my. It also has the advantage of communicating a recipe. Now I have something else here that rhymes, but this is not an original work of mine. If anybody recognizes this, just please hold off till the end. But it's one of my favorites and I wanted to read it. I'll tell you later what it is. One day when I was eating beans at Smoky Joe's Cafe, just sitting digging on the scene at Smoky Joe's Cafe, a girl came walking through the door who I had never seen before. At least, I never saw her down at Smoky Joe's Cafe. And I started shaking when she sat right down next to me. Her knees were almost touching mine at Smoky Joe's Cafe. A chill was running down my spine at Smoky Joe's Cafe. Oh, I could smell her sweet perfume. She smiled at me. My heart went boom. Then everybody in the room at Smoky Joe's Cafe, they said, man, be careful. That girl belongs to Smoky Joe. Then from behind the counter, I saw a man. A chef sat on his head and a knife in his hand. He grabbed me by my collar and began to shout, you better eat all your beans, said boy, and clear right on out. I know I'll never eat again at Smoky Joe's Cafe. And so we'll never meet again at Smoky Joe's Cafe. I'd rather eat my chili beans at Jim's or Jack's or John's or Jean's than take my chances eating down at Smoky Joe's Cafe. Why risk my life when that Smoky Joe's a crazy fool? Anyway, as you probably figured, this is actually a song. It's called Smoky Joe's Cafe by the Coasters from back in the 1950s. And of course it makes use of rhyme and repetition. And I started using this because there's a similarity sometimes between the verses of a poem and the lyrics of some of the songs. However, when reading this as a poem, the pauses and the breaks are a little different. When it's connected to the music, it kind of has to go with the music. Let me just do one more. This has to do with, I wasn't a lawyer till I was 32. I've practiced for 40 years now. But this has something to do with a previous occupation I had for a while. This poem's called Helping Daryl. Daryl's company sometimes needs extra drivers for an overnight run to Tennessee. He gives them my name, and I could use the money, so I take them up on it. I've done it several times, I think. You see, I used to work with Daryl, somewhere, maybe the fish market in my 20s. He seems to know me anyway, knows I can drive. Teamsters. We'd load and unload heavy boxes, deliver all day long, 50-hour weeks, hand trucks, carts, pallet trucks, strong as an ox in all business, proud, smelly. Always assumed I could make some quick money when things got tight, help Daryl out. But my back's not what it used to be. I'm not too sure who Daryl is, but I dreamed about him again the other night. He asked me to take a run for them. I think I've done it before. But when I wake, I don't remember anyone named Daryl, not at Fulton Fish or anywhere else. I'd like to help Daryl out, but my back can't take it, no way. Tore it up years ago for $3.20 an hour. Thanks.
I would not dare to do what John does. Well, with the courage. I have a fascination with rivers, and so this is another river poem. This is a poem entitled On the Nolin. The Nolin is a river, a very pretty river in middle Kentucky, mid-Kentucky. It flows southward, which most poems in Kentucky don't do, southward into the Green River. It is dedicated to a friend of mine, Beverly Darrington Moore, and I won't go into the reasons why. It's a long, complicated story, but anyway. For me, in this poem, the river was, I imagined it as the flow of time. And I like to fish, and I was wading in the river, so this is how that goes. Casting to deep, clear green, the flow a steady press, he works downriver. Upstream, some catches, some regrets. Miles distant and more hours near the source of tiny rills, a storm, now history, scoured red clay from knobby hills. A swollen freshet roiled with aftermath here spills into this undisturbed, clear running current, soiled. Two waters, calm and turbid, flow abreast, unmerged. Two shades of consequence. What husbandries preserve one watershed in clear descent? What negligence or outrage bared the earth dark water carries here? Thus they come, till at last one eddying flow imbues the other where he casts. Beyond dark tinging light, the moot in woven hues pass downstream out of sight. Now, surprise, another relation to law. My poem envisions two colors of water flowing together, at least for a while, side by side, because one is a muddy freshet that empties into a clear running stream. There is a case that was taught in law school, at least for decades, and it probably still is. Paulsgraf versus Long Island Railroad is a case about causation. Essentially is a case that tries to help us determine whether there is too much distance in time or space or intervening factors to fix liability to a wrongful act that is, where the harm happens way downstream. The opinion was written by, at the time, Judge Benjamin Cardozo. He was a member of New York's highest court, later on the United States Supreme Court. But there was a dissent, and it was written by Judge Andrew, and I can't, let's see, I've lost his name, but anyway, Judge Anderson is and it has in it a metaphor that is just so beautiful that I have to read it to you. Into the clear creek, brown swamp water flows from the left. Later, from the right, comes water stained by its clay bed. The three may remain for a space sharply divided, but at last, inevitably, no trace of separation remains. They are so commingled that all distinction is lost. Now, I was aware of that. I loved that dissent. I've always loved it. And when I saw that rill running into the Nolin River, which was clear, and there were these two streams, I knew that this was what Judge Andrew was talking about, except I only had two and he had three streams. So the thing is, Beverly Darrington, I'll tell his story, was a friend of both Sharon, my wife, and me before we were together, and she was something of a matchmaker in us getting together. So my poem is about two things that take a while to get together. So that's about that. And I'm going to do one. Misplaced it. Oh yeah. Another nature poem. It's entitled "The Moonbow of Cumberland River Falls," which is a really wonderful phenomenon in Kentucky. It's the only place you can, in the Northern Hemisphere, and one of the few places in the entire world where you can see a moonbow, which is the name we give to what would be a rainbow if it was rain, but the mist of a waterfall. It turns up a lot of waterfall when the moon is out, but it is rare. You have to be there at the right time, at the right moment, because anything can make it go wrong. It requires a bunch of things to be present. So here it is, the moonbow of Cumberland River Falls. A wisp of spectral light, its unsure presence tremulous as a small bird in a hand, utterly subject to the coincidence of full moon, crystalline night sky, and pace of flow that lets the water churn up a spray to suit refraction of these pale moonbeams. Best viewed at midnight in late winter's low moon point, so mostly seen in bitter cold after the half-mile trail to the viewing deck, an easy jaunt made trepid by the dark. The crowd, assembled early on, will dwindle, shivering cold, boredom, and sleep's allure combining to call out the less determined. All you can tender to entice the moonbow forth are sturdy perseverance, watchfulness, and the fond graces of Our Lady in luck. Even so, some requisite may fail, and all the best of efforts come to naught. But if the elements align in favor, the moonbow all at once will just be there, before your eyes, a tuft of lost sunlight the moon has recast through a bank of mist to form a lucent beauty, mysterious, transient, and a wonder to behold. Another, nature poems can really be very short when they're just simple images, and I like images. Here is a three-line poem entitled "Leaves," which I think is appropriate for the weather and season of them right now, suggesting maybe that things are not always what they seem. Leaves. The whirl of fallen leaves I see settle back on this bare-limbed tree, sparrows alighting momently. My last poem I'll read is one I've always thought of as sort of a poem about my flawed abilities in many things, including writing poems. I came upon a guide to trees, one of these references, that did not use photographic illustrations, but actual drawings. So the trees were perfect. They didn't in this thing. So this is entitled "With a Field Guide to Trees," set in Red River Gorge, Wolfe County, Kentucky. The drawing's pure, spare lines portray the figure this and every oak would raise earth to on any day earth formed itself to draftsman's stroke. Grasping a crack in forest cliff, wind-riven, twisted with wild grape, this oak tree's striving branches lift a cumbered and imperfect shape. Thank you. You all have been great.
Well, thank you. John, you gonna read some more?
Yeah, let's
Okay.
I think we've got a little more
I thought
time.
you would take some questions.
Maybe take some questions at the end if there are some. I'll just do a couple of quick ones because I think we're running a little short. This is my book, by the way. It's called When the Rain Finally Comes. And I think I'll take a moment and read the title poem, which happens to be entitled When the Rain Comes. When the rain comes, we'll run into the fields, arms outstretched, faces gazing upward. Let water splash where it will. When the rain comes, tired crops will take notice, lift weary stems, dust off their flowers, drink with unquenchable thirst. When the rain comes, birds will sing, dogs wag, squirrels scamper, rabbits will sniff the moist air. When the rain comes, parched earth will swallow, long and hard, deep gashes disappear, giddy trees will shiver their leaves. When the rain comes, hope will renew where once it was lost, food abundant enfold us, tears of joy will unseat our fears when the rain finally comes. This poem was inspired by a long drought and the end of the drought when it finally started raining again, which we get those about every other summer, I think. I write a few poems about family, about reflections, about anybody who's a parent who's had their kids grow up and leave. Probably has a couple of these sentiments. This one's called Why Doesn't She Come? The dog of the house looks for her girl, waits patiently, watches the driveway, wonders what became of her. Just last week, her girl gave her a bath, played with her, called her silly names like Fluffer Puffer or the Dogger, hugged her long and hard, gave her treats if she played along. Now she watches and waits, guards the house as always. But her girl doesn't come home. How's a dog supposed to know all this talk about college means her girl isn't coming home? Here's one called Wings. One peers over the edge, another makes flapping sounds. They test legs, wings, then look around. A quick glance back, then with a bound. Strike out over unknown skies, vast, unexplored places, which till now I surmise tempted empty faces. Circle overhead for a time, glance back at us. Again they climb, and off they go to the universe. Then quiet engulfs us like a calm sea. There's no one here but you and me. Did you want to read anything else? Or want to take some questions?
Sure.
And we've got books up front here if anybody's interested in any of them. Does anybody have any questions? Why in the world do you write or anything?
That was kind of mine. What made you decide to write poetry? Both of you.
You first.
Well, I mentioned earlier that I started jotting things down, and some of them sounded like poems, and I decided to try to write poems. And the discipline from writing legal papers, especially briefs and things, helps because I'm used to doing a lot of editing and rewording. But it's an entirely different kind of writing. I think some of it's just fun, some of it's therapeutic, some of it feel a certain compulsion to write about certain things, and some of it's social. I mean, I get together with other writers and we read each other's work and comment on them, that sort of thing. David?
I can't really answer that question definitively. I have liked poetry since I was a child. My father loved to recite poems, and he transferred that to me, and so it was just in me to do that. And I enjoy being a contrarian, as one who still uses measured poetry. So I get a little pleasure out of that because I've had small success with my poems. That's about all
I know you write really heavy stuff because I used to work at the county attorney's office and read some of your stuff. I was wondering if it was like dessert after a meal.
No, it isn't. One of the things about measure, and especially rhyme, is it's really hard.
Yeah, but
I'm not a natural.
Oh, I just wondered if it was a lighter way of expressing that, going through all the research and writing a legal document.
I wish I could say that, but no. When I talk to young people about poems, I warn them. If you try to use measure, you're making it hard for yourself. You can write the free verse, and it's not that hard. I mean, I'm not saying there's something wrong with free verse. It doesn't, being difficult doesn't make it better. And if it's rhyme, you have quadrupled the difficulty.
I got a comment. With all the negative stuff that's on the TV and on the radio today, walking in here and seeing you two guys give us a piece of y'all's life and y'all's world, it was really soothing, and it tell you guys love what y'all do. So I thank y'all for what y'all did, as far as putting these books together, but also being who y'all are and standing up there and sharing it with us.
I also play music, so
Yes.
kind of a different side of life. Can't be serious all the time.
I did hear you hum a tune while you was up there
Yeah.
and performing, so
I can't help.
guess what? That's called being free, right?
That's
right. I second that, Clyde.
Any other questions, comments, anything?
I was just gonna ask, are there any poets, that maybe, that you like, that, induced you into writing poetry, or maybe somebody that you're trying to imitate that you have in the back of your mind a goal? Likewise, John, obviously, songs and lyrics are in the back of your mind. Anybody that comes, or is this just something out of the blue?
I have a list I developed one time of who influenced me in my poems. Some of them are people that probably would not be well known. Wendell Berry is one. Let me just see if I can think of some others. Some of them are dead. So there's a wonderful poet named. Age does take. Well, I'll have to get back to you on that. But there are people, yeah, that definitely influenced me.
But
I
thank
can't-
you, John, for singing Smokey Joe's Cafe,
Oh,
because
all
I
right.
was sitting here thinking, oh, we should sing that.
I can't think of the names of many poets. There's certainly some I really like. I really like Billy Collins. I think his style is very, it's whimsical, it's clever, it's easy for readers to understand, which in case of some poets is very much not the case. But I think, to me, part of it's about communication. So being extremely obscure doesn't work towards that. But I can't think of her name, a poet that passed away a few years ago that wrote dog songs. Do you know who that is? I can't think of her name. Anyway, there are a number of good poets. I didn't start out following them so much, although I was aware of certain poems. They're poems where they've used repetition very effectively, for instance. But mostly have fallen into reading things since I started writing, things that I really like and some things that I am very bored with. So there is a difference.
Well, you mentioned that, I think when you were going to the store, you had phrases in your mind, that's what got you interested in writing poetry, right? There was, something came into your mind and you decided to write it down. I think that's what you said. Did I hear that right?
So, yeah, something like that. Sometimes a phrase or something, a term, something will pop into my head and I'll expand on it. And my theory is, I'm not as skillful as David is. So when I get an idea, if I think it's pretty good, I'll get halfway down the page or something, I'll get in and get out before I mess it up too much. But there's some poems that I write 9 or 10 times before I have a final product. Yeah.
Okay, I read both of your collections. It was really interesting with the cover. Yours was the son and the little girl. And when I was reading that with your daughter, did she go away to college and come back, or you and the dog were longing for her?
She's back.
She's back?
Yeah.
Okay, but it was interesting reading because I could, having nieces and nephews and they go away, and you could see the longing of the parent.
Uh-huh.
And then, and yours, I was really surprised, but you're writing about the 9th Street divide. Cause you don't normally see that in poetry or anything here, or even giving definitions of red wine and everything. It was very serious, but your cover was also so gloomy, and his was light. It was gloom and doom, things just went.
I can be serious too. Sometimes.
No, yours was serious of a father and the changes.
Yeah. Well, also I kind of cheated a little bit because I made it about the dog missing her rather than me missing her.
Yeah, both of you all were missing her.
Yeah.
My cover was created by my wife, Sharon, who is an artist and taught at University of Louisville School of Art for 25 years. So I had a real
Right, and
free.
it's your
hand
attention,
for free.
I mean, it's like,
But
wow.
it's actually a part of it. It's part of a very much bigger drawing that she made, but she pulled this out of it. And the title, knowing that most things break.
That's a great title.
John asked me about it. There is one of the poets who influenced me is E.A. Robinson, and he has just this wonderful poem entitled "Mr. Flood's Party."
Yeah.
And in this poem, Mr. Flood is an old man who lives on the edge of a town, and one night, he's old now and doesn't have, most of his friends have died and stuff. Anyway, he decides to go down and get a bottle of whiskey. He goes into town, gets the bottle, and then starts walking back and decides to partake of the bottle as he's going, and gets a little woozy and decides to set the bottle down. And the passage in the poem is, "Then, as a mother lays her sleeping child down tenderly, knowing," gotta have eyes. Try this again. "Then, as a mother lays her sleeping child down tenderly, fearing it may awake, he set this jug down slowly at his feet with trembling care, knowing that most things break." It is, if you haven't read it, find it. It's a wonderful poem.
So my cover was inspired by, I had a manuscript accepted for publication, and they told me, well, we want a bio, and we want this, and we want that, and one of the things was the cover, the front and back of the cover, and I thought, nobody knows who you are, why on earth, if this was ever in a bookstore, would anybody even pick it up, much less buy it or read it? And I thought, well, I'll give it my best shot. The picture on the front needs to be interesting and probably ought to be colorful. So maybe that would attract attention. And then the clincher on the back was the picture of me with my dog. So doesn't have anything to do with the poems, but
Well, yes, it does.
well, I mean, there are
Many
dog
dog
poems in
poems.
there, but what I'm saying is why somebody would pick it up and open it is kind of a mystery, because people in a bookstore, they see names of poets that they recognize, but there are also a number that they don't, and unless they have a lot of time to kill, it's easily skipped over. But anyway, that was my theory on the cover. Well, is there anything else? I thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark, and Amy. Thank you, Mark.